to do is go through how to set up proper folder structure in Creative Cloud. So we navigate to our Creative Cloud library, and this is for me. I want you to save here, and then also be saving to your USB. Okay, so I'm just going to call this what is it? Winter 260, and then winter. I'm going to go. Okay. So this seems like overkill, this folder structure, but when we're doing kind of our last project, you're going to have Premiere Pro, you're going to have After Effects, you're going to have Illustrator and Photoshop files, as well as music files, picture files, sound files. So it's really nice to have a folder structure. For example, if I was doing a bigger project, I'd have an After Effects file, I'd have the old PP file. That's for Premiere Pro. So there, we've established that, and it's a nice system. Trust me, you'll thank me for doing that, making you do that later as you try to find stuff, and I try to help you because it's really easy. So getting to the actual tutorial, we go to Photoshop, we go New. I have this set up already, but basically here's our parameters, 1080 by 1080. These are pixels. We're going to get into that later. Every single thing we're doing here is going to be the all-important square pixels. So what we're going to do is we could go to Film and Video, and I'm just going to make a new one. It could be 1920 by 1920, but we're going to do 1080 by 1080. Okay, that's square. 72 is our resolution for everything. 72 is screen resolution. You don't have to go higher. Sometimes it's preset to like 300, which is print. Don't want that. 8 bits, color's fine, background fine. We hit OK. I have a square. This is a GIF square, which we're going to use, suitable for posting on Instagram, among other things. Now, when you open Photoshop, it might be in a different workspace, probably in Essentials. Who has used Photoshop? Pretty familiar, you know, just the bare bones. This motion thing is kind of new-ish. So we go to Window. We're making a motion thing, so we go to Window, we go to Motion, and instantly we have a timeline thing, mysterious timeline that pops up. I'm going to lower that down, but here's our familiar layer panel. Now, I like to think of everything as actual physical things here. So just out of habit, I'm going to name this one Paper by double-clicking on it. Here it is, Paper. I'm going to lock it. That's our base. This is a paper we're going to draw on. I am going to create a new solid. It'll be black. And I go over to here, hold down my mouse button. I can pick the rectangle tool. The hotkey, I think, is U, but I'm just going to do this. Here's our parameters for that. Stroke is the outer color. I'm going to make it kind of a lighter shade. Make it solid. I'm going to make it 5 pixels wide. And pull this down. There's our little ledge that the ball will drop off of. Call it ledge. Okay, baby steps. Now, I don't really like it where it was, so I'm going to use another hotkey. I'm going to hit V. We're going to use that a lot. That makes it move, so I can pull it anywhere I want. I'm going to pull it down here. Now, when I keep saying hotkeys, these really help in a lot of these things that are repetitive. Who knows what a hotkey is? Yeah. Okay. If you don't, it's basically a shortcut that will really cut down on you moving your mouse around. But the nice thing about Photoshop, among other things, is if you hold your mouse here, it actually has a tutorial built in. Okay? And that's with anything here. If you don't know what it does, there's the hotkey, L, etc. That's all crazy new, so that's nice. Okay, anyhow, we have our ledge. We lock it. Now it's very important, we're going to make our ball now, which has to fall off. You have to click off your shape before you make a new shape. Okay? So I'm going to click a circle. I'm going to make it a nice bright color, but not too bright. Red with a hideous pink outline. Oh, son of a mother. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, there's two parameters here, very basic. There's different things we'll get into later. I'm going to make that 5, and I'm going to make it a dotted outline just for fun. I don't know why I went back to enter. Okay, you have to hit tab to make that set. Now I'm going to hold down shift while I create this to make a perfectly round ball. Okay, I'm going to call that ball. Now, this is where the magic happens, so to speak. So I have one ball here. If I hold down V, I hit V, I can move it, okay? And it has this nice parameters here. It's basically going to be rolling here and fall. And this is where we're just going to use kind of basic feel physics. Generally, when you drop like a well-inflated ball, it'll bounce about half as high as it fell. Generally, okay, that's what we're going to go with. If you drop a pool ball on a hard concrete floor, it drops different than if you drop like a rubber ball. So we're just going to pretend this is like your childhood kickball ball falling off a ledge. Now we're going to have it come from off screen and go here. But first thing we're going to do is get the parameters down. So I'm moving it to and fro. Okay. If I hold down Option, see how that little white arrow comes up? Now when I click over, I make another one. Okay. So that's the start. Now, in normal animation, you have what's called onion skinning, and that's where those people would flip the flip book. We're going to kind of do an artificial one just to see how it looks here. So I can go up here and I can change the opacity a little bit. See how it ghosts it? Okay. I can also, when I select it on the keyframe, I can hotkey through the number pad. So 30% is 3, 4, 50, etc. So I'm just going to go to 30% by hitting 3. You could also use it here. I'm going to do this the same to this one. Okay. So now when they copy, I'm just going to keep doing this. Okay. Now here's where animation, I want you to feel this out, so to speak. Generally, the closer things are together, the more frames there are, the slower it'll be. Okay. So if, for instance, it's running along a linear timeline, so if these are closely spaced together, like this, it means it's moving much slower. So it's going to be a lot more frames to get it off the edge. Okay, so keep that in mind. You'll see that in practice. It's one thing for me to say it here, but basically we're just going to eyeball this. And this is where, even though this is a really rudimentary way to animate, it's way quicker than drawing. Now you can imagine just already drawing 3 circles perfectly square, etc. It's a little bit more rigid, but we're just doing it to get the feel. Okay, so I'm just going to keep holding down Option, clicking, and I hold down Shift to make it perfectly in line. Okay. Now the moment of truth is here. If it had great speed, it could fly off like Wile E. Coyote. I'm just going to kind of start to bring it down here. Now I start to increase the distance, okay, as the speed increases. Okay. Once it starts to get a little bit faster, you see this distance here is greater, meaning it's faster. I'm going to hold Option T to bring up a transform, okay? And I'm going to start doing a squash stretch to show speed. By holding down an Option or Command, I'm used to a PC, we can stretch this guy, okay? So I can start to stretch him a little bit, and I can do this to my heart's content. So what I have is in my mind, I kind of have an arc. It's not going to be perfect by any means, but we're just doing a tutorial. So I see that here. I stretch this guy, and he's going to pick up a little bit more speed by hitting Command T, holding down Command, and I can stretch him more. Hit Enter. Hit V again. Bring him down more. And so right here is kind of the moment of truth where you have a fun splat, and we'll just kind of really quickly just overdo it. And again. And this is where I could make it a really slow, greater splat, or it could bounce up like super quick, like flubber I'm just going to kind of go in between. So it's going to kind of be right there. Again, with our process, you'll get really good at doing this. Okay, so it's going to spring out. This is a really bad arc, but it's good for demonstration. We're going to bring this back up as it leaves with great energy. It's going to kind of cartoonishly accelerate out. So squish it back down as it gathers its energy. Okay, it's so funny. I keep doing Manga Studio shortcuts because that's what I actually animated. Okay, that's not that funny. Okay, so here it is accelerating out to great speed. And I'm just going to get it off so we can get on with the tutorial. I made a sound effect. When you're really into this, you're going to make sound effects. Okay, so basically what we have is an animation that's not moving. And I can come in here and kind of fix it by fixing this arc a little bit, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Okay, so here's where it kind of everything changed. So we'll see how well this works. In the old days, so there's two different ways to do this. Okay, we have down in our timeline here, we have create video timeline, which could be the default. We're going to do create frame animation. So you just hold down this little arrow, create frame animation. Okay, I think we just auto populate here. And by default, in the old days, we'd select these and they would all line up. But now I think we have to click on it here. And all it does is this confusing, everything's in one frame, which is fine. Over here in these tiny little hash marks, click on it, and lo and behold, there's a menu. Okay, so we're going to make frames from layers. Okay, click on that. Suddenly, we have an animation. Okay, now there's several things wrong with it. This is creating an animation by toggling on and off transparency. Okay, so first, one thing that I forgot to do is I forgot to change all the transparencies back to 100. So all I have to do is Command Z to go back, which is nice. And again, and I'm going to go select all of my balls here and go up to 100% opacity on them. Okay. Now I'm going to do what I did before, create frame animation. I'm going to go back here and say make frames from layers. Now it'll be a little bit more vibrant, but there's still something wrong with it. Obviously, our paper disappears along with our ledge. Okay, so understanding that this is toggling on and off transparency. So what it did was it takes our bottom layer all the way on the left, and then it went through, which makes sense for our ball. But we want our set, basically what I saw our set, to be standard and be there the whole time, obviously. So we'll go back to when the said thing, our paper, is visible, i.e. not here because it's invisible. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on paper. I'm going to take the lock off. And see this little eye thing? Unify layer visibility. So if I click on it, it says make the visibility in other frames and shades match the current visibility. I'm going to say match, please. Lo and behold, it's on every frame. So we just have to do the same thing with our ledge. Okay, I unclick the lock. The reason I locked it is because it's a good habit once you're done with an element to lock it so you don't fudge it and mess it up when you're moving the ball around. So I unlock it, go back to the eyeball, I say match. Now we have a little animation. Hooray! Okay, so that's part one. We're going to get into part two on how to do a little bit more in-depth animation once we have mastered this part. So what I want to see is you guys play with your squash and stretch and just feel how that timing is, okay? So that concludes the first tutorial.